The long-awaited day had finally arrived. Cammy stood in front of Miss Tam's gate, her wide eyes taking in every detail. At last, she was going to see the mansion her mother, Uchi, had spoken about so many times. "Come," her mother would often say during their conversations. "Do you know that the mansion has 5 living rooms, each one uniquely designed?" Now, standing there, Cammy could hardly believe it. Her mother had never been allowed visitors, so this was her first glimpse of the place. She reached out, wanting to feel the intricate details on the gate, but Uchi quickly grabbed her hand. "Cammy, I know you are excited we are moving in, but you have to be sensitive. Remember, Miss Tammy is in mourning," Uchi said firmly. Miss Tammy had lost her daughter, her only child, in a car crash, and since then, she had been a shadow of herself. All her life, she worked hard to ensure her daughter, Jad, had a good life, and now she was gone. Just like Uchi, they were both single mothers who had successfully raised their children without the help of a husband. It was these facts that made Tammy admire Uchi. On top of that, Uchi was trustworthy and hardworking, which easily found her way into Tam's heart. When Jad passed away, Uchi was the only one among the household staff whom Tammy would even let come close or speak to her. One night, when Tammy woke up really sad, she wanted to speak to just one person, Uchi, but Uchi was not a live-in staff member like some of the others. So, the next morning, when Uchi resumed her duties, Tammy said to her, "Please move in with me. I need a friend. I need you." All her life, Tammy had never really made close friends. Her business and duty were her everything. Uchi was sympathetic when she heard Tammy's offer. She, too, had considered how much of a difference it would make if she lived with Tammy, but she couldn't leave her daughter alone at home. "Tammy, I would love to, but, I have a teenage daughter. I can't leave her by herself," Uchi responded. "My friend," Tammy said, holding Uchi's hands, "I have many rooms in this house. Your daughter is welcome to stay in any of them. I just want you to be here with me." Uchi was touched that Tammy was willing to flaunt her long-standing no-visitors policy just to accommodate her and Cammy. After a brief moment of hesitation, she agreed. Now, Tammy had settled Uchi and Cammy into their separate rooms after a very warm welcome. She wouldn't even let them stay in the staff quarters or share a room. They were going to live on the same floor, where her room was situated. Cammy could not believe her new life. She ran around her new room when she was finally alone. It was so spacious. The room was bigger than the entire self-contained apartment where she and her mother lived. Her luxurious new room was a blend of elegance and comfort. At the center was a king-size bed draped with a plush velvet duvet in deep emerald green. A crystal chandelier hung overhead. On one side of the room, double doors opened into a spacious walk-in wardrobe with rows of shelves, hanging racks, and drawers. The ensuite bathroom featured a marble countertop, a large bathtub, and a rainfall shower with gold accents, adding a touch of opulence. Gosh, she jokingly fainted while imagining whether to sleep in the bedroom, closet, or bathroom. Yet, despite her bubbling excitement, Cammy kept her mother's warning in mind about being sensitive to Miss Tammy's grief. So, over the next few weeks, she walked around with caution, minding her business, and speaking only when spoken to. But one afternoon, there was a knock on Cammy's door. To her surprise, it was her mother, but she was not alone. Miss Tammy stood beside her. Cammy became nervous, wondering why her mother had come to see her with Miss Tammy. "Good evening," Cammy greeted them, her voice a little shaky. Her mother smiled, sitting down next to her, while Miss Tammy took a seat in a nearby chair. "Come," her mother began. "Miss Tammy has something important to tell you, but before she does, I want you to know that we are free to decline her offer. We are not forcing you into anything." Cammy nodded, her curiosity growing as she turned to Miss Tammy. "I'd like to sponsor the rest of your education," Miss Tammy said gently, "but I would also like you to attend the school my late daughter went to." It's a prestigious college that will prepare you for studying abroad when the time comes. Cammie's eyes widened in shock. First, Miss Tammy had opened her home to them, and now she was offering to pay for her education. She glanced at her mother, expecting her to be as excited as she was, but instead, Uchi looked concerned. "What's wrong, Mom?" she asked, and Uchi softly sighed. "It's a big school for rich girls. Will they accept my Cammie? I'm just worried you will struggle to fit in," she responded. But Tammy immediately cautioned her. "You cannot think like that. She's got the potential to go far, and this school will give her the opportunities she deserves. Do not let fear hold her back." Cammie sat quietly, taking in every word. Her heart raced. A prestigious school, studying abroad. It all sounded like a dream, but she also felt the weight of her mother's concerns. What if the other girls did not accept her? What if she did not fit in? "It's your decision, Cammie. Whatever you choose, I will support you," her mother said, squeezing her arms. Cammie felt a lump in her throat. The thought of leaving her mother and adjusting to a new world frightened her, but something deep inside her knew this could be the break she had always hoped for. It could be a stepping stone to providing the life she wanted for herself and her mother in the future. So boldly, she turned to Miss Tammy, her voice steady with determination. "Thank you, Ma. I'll go to that school, and I'll make sure I succeed." Uchi immediately asked, still looking worried, "Are you sure, Cammie?" But Cammie nodded. "Yes, Mom. I'll make you proud." Tammy smiled, relief washing over her face. "You already have, Cammie. I'll make the arrangements." At that moment, Cammie knew her life was about to take a new, exciting turn. Weeks passed, and the time had finally come for Cammie to start at Pacific HS, the prestigious boarding school for girls. As she sat in the principal's office with her mother and Miss Tammy, it all still felt surreal. She thought she might miss the luxury of Miss Tammy's home, but now, seeing Pacific Halls, she wasn't so sure. The school was no ordinary place. If you did not know better, you'd think it was a five-star hotel. Cammie absent-mindedly ran her hands over her new school skirt, amazed by the fine fabric. It was a far cry from the thin material of her old skirt, which always required her to wear black tights underneath. After a few moments, her mother and Miss Tammy said their goodbyes, leaving her alone with the principal. "Please be good. Do not waste this opportunity," her mother said, hugging her tightly before getting into the car. As the car disappeared from view, Cammie turned to follow the principal, only to realize she was standing there alone. Confused, she made her way back to the office, surprised that the principal had left her behind. "Ma'am, I did not realize you had gone back to your office," Cammie said politely. The principal glanced up from her computer, rolling her eyes. "Were you expecting me to wait for you?" she snapped. Cammie was taken aback. Not long ago, the principal had been sweet in front of her mother and Miss Tammy, assuring her that she would love her time at Pacific Halls. "I'm sorry," Cammie apologized quickly. "Who will show me to my dorm?" she asked hesitantly. The principal raised an eyebrow. "Dorm," she repeated slowly, as if tasting the word. "I see you're new here. We prefer to use the full-term dormitory. You will need to adjust to our standards." The woman finally stood up and asked Cammie to follow her. She would not even offer or call someone to help Cammie carry her luggage. Struggling under the weight of her bags, Cammie did not let the principal's rudeness bother her. She was just excited to be there. When they reached her room, Cammie's face lit up. It was beautiful, with 2 beds neatly arranged. One bed was clearly taken, and the principal pointed to the empty one. "It's so pretty," Cammie exclaimed. "I thought I'd be in a room with bunk beds." The principal sighed, rolling her eyes again. "Everyone is in class right now. Unpack your things and make sure you don't steal anything or you'll be expelled," she said coldly. Still, Cammie was not fazed by her attitude. She smiled and nodded, which only seemed to irritate the principal more. These kids always reek of where they did not belong, the woman muttered angrily before storming out and slamming the door behind her. Cammy sat on the bed, her smile fading as her earlier excitement began to waver. She put on a brave face, but her mother's warning echoed in her mind. For a moment, she felt unsure if she had made the right choice coming here. One evening during dinner, Cammy walked into the dining hall, as usual, expecting to eat her meal alone. She spotted Tiwa and a group of girls sitting at their table. Without much thought, she headed to her usual spot, only to notice the girls rushing over to sit there, clearly trying to mock her. This hurt Cammy deeply, and she turned to leave, deciding to snack on her provisions back in her room instead. But just as she reached the door, she heard someone call out, "Cammy, come sit with us." Cammy turned around, surprised to see Noah waving her over. Still in shock, she slowly approached the table. Noah, who was sitting with another girl, smiled politely at her, but excused herself as soon as Cammy sat down. "Is she leaving because of me?" Cammy asked shyly. "No." Noah shook her head. "She's got a math test tomorrow." Cammy smiled slightly. "Thank you for letting me sit here." She chuckled, feeling a bit more at ease. "It's a public space. No need to thank me." Noah paused, her expression growing more serious. "Besides, you're my sister. I can't just watch them treat you like that." Cammy froze, unsure of how to respond. Noah always spoke strangely, and Cammy didn't fully understand her or the meaning behind her words. So they both ate in silence. When they finished and headed back to their rooms, the quiet continued until Noah suddenly spoke up again. "I'm sure you learned this attitude from my dad." Always silent and unbothered about how the next person feels, Cammy, clearly tired, replied, "I really don't know what you're talking about. I've never met your dad." "No, my mom offered me a scholarship to Pacific Halls. I'm just here to study." Noah studied her for a moment before rushing over to her suitcase. She pulled out a photo album, opened it, and placed it on Cammy's lap. "Are you telling me you don't know him?" Cammy pointed to a picture of her father. Her eyes widened. The man in the photo looked just like her. The resemblance was undeniable. "I do not know him, but we obviously look alike," Noah slowly said, realization dawning on her. Noah, accepting that Cammy might be telling the truth, took the album and tucked it into her box. As usual, she left the room, leaving Cammy confused. A week passed, and despite the lingering tension, Cammy and Noah began to talk more. Small conversations were shared, smiles exchanged in the hallways, and they sat together in the cafeteria. A friendship was starting to form. Cammy was curious about the man in the album, but decided not to ask Noah. It was clear Noah didn't want to talk about it, and Cammy didn't want to jeopardize the fragile bond they were building. But she was sure of one thing. The man in the picture was her father. One evening, Noah came into the room crying. Without hesitation, Cammy rushed to her side, wrapping her arms around her. Noah collapsed into Cammy's embrace, sobbing on her shoulder. "My parents are finally getting a divorce," she cried, her voice breaking as the tears streamed down her face. Cammy offered silent comfort, holding her tightly. Noah, with her guard down, began to open up about her family, sharing stories of her father's cheating scandals and how her mother had endured it all. "I don't blame my mother. I'm proud of her. It just hurts that my parents won't be together anymore," Noah added, pausing before glaring at Cammy. "Your mother can have him now, I guess. She and Jad's mom planned to bring you here all along," she said, her voice filled with annoyance. Cammy's heart tightened with anger. She wasn't about to let anyone insult her mother or Miss Tammy. "That's enough, Noah," Cammy snapped. "I'm sorry for what's happening with your parents, but do not cross the line. You will not speak about my mom or Miss Tammy like that." She stepped away from Noah, retreating to her side of the room. For a moment, silence hung between them, but Noah quickly followed, wrapping her arms around Cammy. "I'm sorry, Cammy. I shouldn't have said that." Noah apologized, her voice small and regretful. Cammy softened slightly but kept her stance firm. "That's okay," she replied, "but don't ever say something like that again." They sat down again, the tension melting away. Suddenly, Noah burst into laughter. "I didn't know you had so much fire in you. You're definitely an AA," she teased, using her father's last name. But Cammy didn't care about the name. "No, I have no interest in meeting your father, and I'm sure my mom doesn't either, so you can relax," Cammy said calmly. She explained that her mother had never spoken about her father, and how sad she seemed when Cammy had asked about him once. That had been enough to make Cammy never bring it up again. "I won't bring this up to my mom," Cammy assured her. "You have my word. Besides, I don't want to make things worse between your parents." But Noah had already moved past the conversation, her smile returning. All she wanted was to be friends with Cammy. She apologized again for the hard time she had given her and asked for a second chance. Cammy accepted, and the two girls hugged it out. From that day forward, Cammy and Noah were almost inseparable. They spent their free time learning more about each other, and their bond grew stronger. Other girls in the school began warming up to Cammy too, since Noah was quite popular. Tiwa, however, remained mean, continuing to bully Cammy whenever she was alone. But Cammy never retaliated. She was there to study, and that was all that mattered to her. Weeks passed, and it was time for the girls of Pacific Halls to head home for the holidays. As Cammy and Noah packed their luggage, the matron came by to inform Noah that her father had arrived to pick her up. Noah was shocked. Her father had never come to her school before. She knew it had to do with the divorce. She looked over at Cammy, whose heart raced at the news. The thought of being in the same space as her estranged father terrified her. "Are you sure you don't want to meet him?" Noah asked gently. "He's been a terrible husband to my mom, but he hasn't been so bad to me." Cammy shook her head firmly. "No, I don't want to meet him. I'm content with my life. My mother is enough for me," she responded confidently. Noah raised an eyebrow, coughing lightly. "Only your mother?" she asked with a touch of sarcasm. Cammy smiled and corrected herself. "My mother and my sister are enough for me." The two girls hugged, and soon after, Noah left to meet her dad outside. About an hour later, the matron came by again, announcing that Uchi had arrived to pick Cammy up. Excitement surged through her, and she hurried out of the room to meet her mother. But when she reached the waiting room, Cammy froze in shock. Standing there was her mother, Uchi beside the man from the picture, Noah's father and Noah herself. Her instinct was to turn back, but her hurried entrance had already drawn their attention. Her mother waved at her, and with a forced smile, Cammy walked over to them. "Come," Uchi began, pulling her into a hug. "Say hello to your uncle," the man interjected, cutting Uchi off. Cammy began to boil with anger. Ridiculous. Was he really about to deny being her father? They looked so much alike. The resemblance was almost like looking into a mirror. She wanted to pull her mother away from that humiliating scene, but as she reached for her hand, she heard Noah scream, "Uncle TR!" Noah yelled, running toward someone else. Cammy's confusion deepened as there stood another man identical to the one beside her mother. It was clear that the two men were identical twins. Cammy watched in disbelief as Chuka, though embracing Noah, kept his gaze locked on Uchi. Uchi, too, could hardly keep her own gaze away from Chuka. It was as if they were both seeing ghosts. Noah's father quickly ushered the girls away to give Chuka and Uchi space to talk. "I wanted to come back to the room to call you," Noah started explaining to Cammy as they walked on. "On our way out, your mom ran into us, but she called my dad by his twin's name." Chuka quickly corrected her, saying that she had the wrong twin. "That's when it clicked for me. If my father did not know your mom, then you're obviously Uncle Chuka's daughter," Noah said. "So I told my dad, and he went back to speak to your mom." Cammy shook her head, still not wanting to accept what was unfolding. "No, I told you I'm content with my mother and sister. Besides, your uncle probably has a family of his own. My mother, and I wouldn't want to complicate his life. No, Cammy, I get it, Noah said gently. But Uncle Chuka is a wonderful man, and you deserve a father like him. It never crossed my mind that he could be your father because my dad is the one with many cheating scandals. Uncle Chuka is always focused on his many businesses, and I'm so proud of him. Cammy started to lose her footing in the conversation, surprised by Noah's enthusiasm. But deep down, she felt a strange tingle of hope. What if he doesn't want me? She asked quietly. Noah smiled knowingly. No matter what you believe about family, family is forever. Even if he doesn't know you yet, you will always be his daughter. As they approached the older men, Cammy's heart raced. She couldn't understand why her mother had never told her about him. Perhaps she had her reasons. It's okay, she whispered, half to herself. Noah took her hand. You're not alone, Cammy. I'm right here. With that, Cammy took a deep breath and stepped forward, finally ready to face the truth about her family.